What's up, everybody? I am back with another reaction video. This one's like a new one from the channel The Second Story. So definitely check out her channel. I like to make sure I give people that I react to the props they deserve. Uh, Also follow me in links in my description below, like my YouTube and Twitch channel where I stream games, react to videos, and review content. So this video seemed interesting. Didn't react to it, so I'm coming in fresh. Or like I didn't see this before, so I'm coming in fresh. That's what I mean. Strong female characters are just toxic men. That is definitely like a headliner, eye catcher. So let's see what she has to say about female or just toxic female characters, or toxic, or sorry, female characters that just portrayed as like the toxic men that most people out there think men are. So without further ado, let's see what she has to say.
Scene opens on a shop or a market. The female character comes in and starts to examine the wares intended in terms of size for men. This could be swords, guns, bows, some kind of weapon.
I kind of feel bad that the last season got caught up in the whole COVID mess, so it's kind of like it's a little so at the end.
And the male shopkeeper comes over and says, "Ah, a lady, it just so happens that we have these lighter swords, these smaller guns, these differently made bows. These are all intended and made specifically for women who tend to have smaller hands, weaker grip strength, and so on. Would you like to try one?" Then the woman laughs and girl boss and says something along the lines of, "Us lady folk can handle blah 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 big man size the same as any of you boys. Stop being so misogynistic." This is so incredibly idiotic. This is the exact same as some woman walking into a shoe store and the guy comes out and says, "Ah, you have smaller feet, so let me show you these shoes over here that are made in your size." But the woman stops him cold. "No," she says, "I am a strong female character. I will wear size 12 man shoes like strong man folk because I am no different from man." It's just incredibly dumb and it needs to stop. But these days, you can't make it through a single shelf in a bookstore without coming across something that proudly contains within its pages a strong female character. Such a trend is not limited to women's lit or YA, but has seeped into the content of literary fiction, genre fiction, mystery fiction, romance, middle grade fiction, and so on and so on. And this is true across all mediums: books, movies, television, and even video games. Stories ostensibly for men.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing her, I'm focused, but like that cup of, I don't know, latte or something, that I don't know what it is, but it looks very delicious.
And stories for women. This isn't a sudden surge of female characters, but of specifically strong female characters. Fundamentally different, we're told. Strong female characters are one of the many cancers.
Okay. Otto Tedesco and the Hillary Lane. Hopefully, I was hoping I can get her name. I just didn't want to call her the what is it, like, I didn't want to just call her the second story lady. Hillary Lane, which actually sounds like a street sign. 95th and Hillary Lane.
Threatening to destroy storytelling here in the West. For a writer, the presence in their book of a strong female character is more important than the MFA they spent 6 years and $100,000 uselessly cultivating. If your book doesn't feature in some way a strong female character, then you might as well feed it to the confetti machine because no one else will touch it. You could look at this as an aspect of the female domination of literature that people sometimes talk about, and that is definitely a factor, even when the authors are male, if at least one major character isn't a strong female.
This kind of reminds me of like a book fox that I react to, a couple of times with narratives of how men and women are depicted in literature, even spreading out into other forms of media.
Male, he will be shown the door. Or go the other way, even if the writer is female, if one of her characters isn't a strong woman of a specific type, she will invariably be bullied and pressured into changing it, provided publishers even bother pursuing her book. I get that this might sound a bit disingenuous coming from a woman. As a female, shouldn't I be all about the proliferation of strong female characters? Shouldn't the increase in female representation make me happy? As a woman, Where do I even start? First of all, I don't know what this is exactly, this bizarre explosion of this one highly specific type of so-called female character, but it isn't female representation and it isn't female empowerment. It's actually the opposite, which I'll get into in a minute. More than that, these women are barely women. They are nominally women. In almost every case that I looked at, almost every story I read or watched, almost every character highlighted by critics as an excellent, strong female character, this female character typically had much more in common with men. It wasn't just that her strength was portrayed in a masculine way, like that turbo cringe shot in Twilight when Bella started arm wrestling all the dudes. It was also that everything else about these women was very masculine, so much so that the fact that they were women was only evident by reading the pronouns if it was in a book, or looking for boobs if it was a game or a movie. Otherwise, there was no real way to determine that these women were women. For the record, in case this somehow isn't clear, I am not saying that female characters are bad, but rather this specific industry-branded strong female character. And a huge part of that is that genuinely female strong characters are wonderful, but you hardly ever see them anymore. I miss female characters. I miss the Ripleys and the Sarah Connors. I want more Jo Marches and even Meg Marches. I also don't understand why these women aren't considered strong female characters. Maybe they are, but if that's the case, then why do people claim that there have only recently been strong women in stories? Were the Ripleys and the Sarah Connors and the Lucy Pevensies and the Eowyn's not strong enough? Was there something wrong with them? Were they not...
Because a lot of them were written by men who arguably do a better job portraying women in good light than women tend to do. Because some, not all, some women come into these spaces with either an blanket statement activist mindset or chip on their shoulder, or just overcompensating for certain things that she deems that lacked in the past or wasn't enough in the past. So like, you know, like trying to take a dig at the whole damsel in distress by overcompensating, like now I gotta rescue myself, like the live action Little Mermaid one, where the male lead, her love interest, was supposed to be the one to ultimately kill Ursula to, you know, show King Triton the goodness of mankind, the surface dwellers. That was a pivotal moment in the animated film. But you took all the live action version took all that away, because like so many movies prior to or at least around the time of the live action Little Mermaid, we've been inundated with girl bosses that have to save themselves, because if somebody come rescues her, usually a man, it's like a fear, or it's like, oh, it might be a show of weakness if she has to be rescued. Or you will have to balance it out where one moment she gets saved and another moment the guy has to be saved, to kind of even things out, because God forbid women like to be saved by the hunky masculine hero, which deep down a lot of women like that fantasy. They like to envision themselves to, yeah, sure, help the hero, but be the one to get rescued by the hunky, suave male lead. That's the fantasy. But, you know, it, like I said, it's overcompensating more so than anything else. They can't just, you know, go, because I agree with her. We like the Sarah Connors because there was an overarching story with her that led to her being the badass. She wasn't just that right out the gate, because it wouldn't be as interesting. Same thing with Ripley. It's like there's like a arc to their badassness. There was like a pathway. There was some steps. A hero's journey to get to, is to have them get to the spot where they are to become timeless heroines. But nowadays, you know, some of these writers undercut all that stuff, and certain studios allow that because they don't want to look like they're misogynist or any kind of Islamophobe or whatever. It's like they're undercutting, they're skipping the line to get to spots that wasn't earned.
Manly enough? There is something perverse in the fact that a strong female character must present strength in the way a man does. Women cannot, it seems, just be strong. No, they have to be man-strong. Otherwise, apparently, they're not strong and they're not worthwhile women. In a sense, this comes across like women as women are being pushed aside and that women as men are what is to be preferred or celebrated. That is, a woman is not worth anything unless she strips off her femininity and dons the masculinity of men. One example to get things rolling here would be Gillian Anderson's character in The Fall, Stella Gibson, whose behavior was deliberately and explicitly meant to be a female doing man things, including memorably picking up a random younger man in a bar to take back to her hotel room as a kind of weird show of sexual dominance. When she was later scolded for doing this, considering particularly that the man was married, she didn't acknowledge that there was anything wrong with her actions, but that it was merely hypocritical for men to have a problem with a woman doing something that was apparently, to her anyway, normal for a man. The layers of garbage there are astounding. Let's ignore the ludicrous implication that every man everywhere for all of time, according to the writer of The Fall, fully intends to sleep with literally every able-bodied woman who crosses his path. And let's instead focus on the way this woman's complexity and character were built around aspects which she and the writer framed as at least socially masculine. This woman's strength was presented in her impulse to behave unapologetically in a way that was deemed common to men. This also highlighted her independent separateness from men and her social superiority to men, because, well, at least she wasn't a hypocrite about it. All of which also, by the way, somehow made her equal to men, I think. As such, she was lauded as a strong female character. More than that, Gillian Anderson herself pointed out that a part of what made Stella Gibson confident and strong was her masculinity, which suggests that in order for girls and women to be strong or impressive or confident or successful, they have to, in some way, be manlike. Let's just tiptoe around the fact that women in popular culture these days are being more and more defeminized. This ostensibly is being...
And that is like, the problem here. Because it's not saying like women can't learn or adopt certain masculine traits. It's just not a good fit, because you'll end up getting burned in the long run, because some women can't turn that off. When they outside of the workspace, they tend to bring that attitude with them, especially in social dynamics, especially in relationships. Guys do not get turned on or find it appealing for a woman who has masculine traits, because that's not what we are attracted to. We are attracted to feminine traits, which is the polar opposite of what a man is. Like the flip effect, women wouldn't be attracted to a guy who acting very like, like, oh my God, like, it's like, brushing his hair like that. It's like, oh my God, like, I love your shoes. And it's like talking very dainty and have his hand like that. And like, doing the bird hands like girls do, or doing the clack it, like all that stuff. A girl will get turned off. Like, that will just register to her like, oh, he's gay. I can't be attracted to that, because I need somebody who has very dominant masculine, traits, things that, really speaks to me and my biology. It's just like, we are attracted to like asymmetrical stuff. It just is what it is. But when somebody calls out on it, whether it's a man or a woman calls that out, they're deemed like either misogynist or have internalized misogyny. And it's kind of just weird buzzwords. They're just trying to shield themselves to face that reality. They just love living in that delusion that everybody's equal on every metric imaginable. Like the example she put in about like the whole shoe example. And I was like, it's kind of, we're living in like a weird world right now.
To provide more strong, realistic female characters. But the result is characters who aren't just bad characters, and they aren't just non-female female characters. Very, very often, they're actually bad people too. But because they're women being bad in the way supposedly men are allowed to be bad, that makes it not just okay, but actually admirable. Apparently. I don't know about other women, but speaking for myself alone, I find these horrendously de-womaned, anti-feminine female characters deeply insulting, to the point that I feel womanness has not even been portrayed. To my mind, these are not female characters. I don't know what they are, but they aren't female characters. There are three major things I want to talk about today. Why are all these strong female characters so terrible? Why has it resulted in increasingly non-female women? And is there a better way to write a strong woman? Spoiler alert, the answer to number 3 is yes, but we need to get through the other points first so we can fully understand where we've gone so wrong. That way we can, never make the same mistakes again. Let's talk first about strength. This is a big topic and encompasses an assortment of issues. So first, we're going to talk about how absurd and insulting it is to present female characters as being only strong if they possess strength that is comparable to a man's. I have myself expressed fatigue at the overabundance of girl boss characters, and I've heard others say it as well. But something worth pointing out. The girl boss character isn't annoying because she's a girl boss, but because she's not a girl. She's some weird faux male. What have I done? Some ostensibly female character wearing man skin and man traits, pretending that that makes her a strong woman. It's off-putting. You don't have to be looking for it to see that the only strength allowed to be present in strong female characters is the same strength that is present in your average male characters. It doesn't matter that there certainly are women out there who can swing a sword or fix their own engine or accurately fire a Desert Eagle with one hand. The point is that nowadays, representation in media would have us, and by us I mean both women and men, but especially women, believe that a woman who cannot do these things is inferior to other women who can, because she is inferior to men. That a woman who has no interest in swinging a sword or who finds the Desert Eagle too big for her hands is therefore not ever going to qualify as a strong female and is probably being oppressed or enslaved in some way or something, I don't know. To start with, I think it would be helpful to define and then unbox the idea of strong insofar as it pertains to characters and character building. In the earliest days of this trend, I assumed that a strong female character was one that was well written. My initial complaint regarding the demand for more strong female characters was that there were already hundreds of well-written women on the pages and on the screens of storytelling throughout history, throughout the world, probably thousands. In time, however, I was corrected in my apparently erroneous assumptions. Whether or not they were well written was not the matter, I was told. The issue was that they needed to be strong. What does this mean, strong? A lot of writers these days interpret that literally, that a woman has to be physically mighty to be even remotely impressive. The reality, like it or not, is that most women, even very trained female athletes,
and they fail to understand their strength, their strength in femininity. You have a superpower just like guys have their own superpower. We wield it very differently. It's not something that is interchangeable because it doesn't work. What makes a woman strong is not something, that will work for a man. It will never work for a man. It'll be a hindrance to a man, but it's a very powerful weapon in the hands of a woman because that fits them. It's just like by the flip effect, what makes a guy strong will make a woman inherently weak, if not immediate, definitely in the long run. Because what was the I think it was George Lucas who said, just because you put pants on a woman doesn't make her strong. His characters during his reign of Star Wars, a lot of his female characters were pretty dang cool and often wore feminine outfits. Princess Leia was one of the biggest heroes in Star Wars. Not because she wielded the blaster like Han Solo, because of her intellect, which is often a woman's greatest strength. They're known to strategize. It's just like, but she also didn't overtake the lanes that made Han and Luke strong in. She was allowed to be strong in her own spot, in her own lane, and allow the other guys to do their part. Not necessarily allow, but you know what I mean. Where Han was great at, he's allowed to be great at. Where Luke was great at, he was allowed to be great at. Nobody overtook the other. Everybody had their spot in the sun. But, God forbid that, guys are, because that's the problem with most movies and a lot of material nowadays, that guys aren't allowed to be guys without it deeming toxic. It's just, they, either are portrayed as like dopey Homer Simpsons or psychopathic Ted Bundys of the world. It's just, there's no middle ground anymore. That's why women have such a hard time finding good examples of good positive men out there, because most of social media and most of the materials they're absorbing isn't portraying men in a very positive light, one way or the other. It's like, no girl wants an incompetent dope like Homer Simpson to look after her well-being in a long-term relationship. And definitely, they shouldn't be going after the Ted Bundys of the world, because that won't be good for them in the long run in a monogamous relationship. There needs to be a guy, kind of like most guys in the 80s action films, that it's competent and heroic, that will kill the guy that's like the Ted Bundy types. That is fine examples. Like the Wesley Snipes in Blade is a fine example. Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando is a good example. uh, you know, Jean-Claude Van Damme in Universal Soldier is a good example. Or even going as far as like most of Matthew McConaughey's movies. It's like a good example for most part as like good positive male role models for women to like idealize, like the kind of guy that you want in the long run. Or Matthew McConaughey in real life is like ideal example of what kind of man that she should like strive for, or at least getting somewhere close akin to being like the representation of positive masculinity that isn't like, you can never say, Matthew McConaughey is an idiot, nor can you say he's some kind of monster. He is like a very like grounded individual that you will want as a long-term partner. That when the chips are down, he is there and he knows how to get out of the muck and then get you out of dating situations without resorting to violence as like the overall answer.
Will fall short in physical strength when compared to men. This goes for the strength of a punch, to grip strength, to a whole host of other physical areas. There's a reason women have their own sports leagues and fighting leagues. It wouldn't be fair for women to have to compete against men. But there's nothing wrong with that. Women are under no obligation to be as strong as men. There's no rule anywhere that says women have to be considered as strong as men, otherwise that's misogynistic. It's not. It's fine and normal. So just to be clear, partly because I'm also a woman, I have no issue with the fact that women are typically not going to be as strong men. That doesn't mean I think less of women, because as we'll soon see, physical strength is only one kind of strength, and measuring women against men is pointless. Women don't have to be as strong as men in order to be strong, even physically so. Strong women are impressive in their own right. They don't need to be man strong to be legitimately admirable or even aspirational. At first glance, it seems fine, even commendable, to portray the fact that a woman too is capable of masculine types of physical strength. However, it suggests that for a woman to truly be strong, she must be stronger than men. But how a woman's physical strength compares to a man's has nothing at all to do with the existence of the strength itself. A woman does not cease to possess physical strength if hers is found to be inferior to or different from a man's. If a strong female character is being written into the narrative in order to be aspirational to female audiences, depicting her as being strong only because she has masculine strong traits will have the opposite effect in most cases.
Mulan in the animated film is a good example of how, like, a woman can be strong, but in her own way. Not just to carbon copy of whatever works for a man. It doesn't work that way. There's plenty of other examples. Princess Peach in the Super Mario movie, good example of still having feminine features being the majority of the character, but like she can kick some ass, just make sure she's a well-rounded character. But she ain't trying to be as good or as strong or even stronger than Super Mario. It's just like, where the female character strengths lie and work with that in that lane. Don't try to glom on other stuff that won't fit the character, because that's where people start eye rolling and start getting cringe feelings. Because, come on, like Rey Palpatine, I don't see in the long run her being like the same. Well, I don't know. There are some little girls that look at, Rey as like a cool role model, but not in the way you probably want her to be. Not in the same way as maybe like Princess Leia or Ripley or even like Lara Croft. Women who still have her femininity, but don't hesitate to kick some ass. Sure, Lara Croft uses guns, but she ain't trying to like do the exact same stuff like Rambo would have done. It doesn't work that way. She works in her lane using weapons that she can properly wield as a woman.
Women who are not stronger than the average strong male might view themselves as not only weak, but as a disappointment to their fellow women, inferior not just to strong men, but to strong women. Which leads us to the second point. This will present to audiences the idea that feminine strength, or anything at all that makes a woman less masculine, is weakness. This will lead women and young girls to come to despise their inherent femininity as something to be ashamed of. We have once again reached a point in history where young girls are being conditioned to be ashamed of their bodies. Why? Because if they're too feminine, then that must mean they're not very strong. Horseshoe theory, extreme modern feminism is indistinguishable from actual misogyny. So you see, female characters will tend now to be written with less and less femininity femininity because the modern zeitgeist has declared that femininity is weakness. It's madness, but there it is. Not to speak of the fact that women who go out of their way to try to be like men because they insist that it makes them better women are very off-putting to both men and other women. It should go without saying that I love physically strong female characters, like, for example, Sarah Connor or even Éowyn. I love the shield maidens and the powerful ladies in ancient tales like Brunhild. But in times past, these types of characters weren't required to present masculinity as strength, but rather strength as strength. In all other areas, they were permitted to be women, very feminine women. In fact, it was their femininity that gave them strength. Sarah Connor was a mother who turned into a mega badass so she could protect her son. Éowyn was a princess who, in the end, wanted only the power to protect her uncle, her family, and who still behaved with feminine grace and proudly declared, at the crucial moment, that she was most emphatically not a man, letting her long hair flow freely before delivering the killing blow. There's a reason Éowyn is admired by girls, because Éowyn's strength existed because of her femininity, not in spite of it. It's worth adding, in case this isn't already clear, I also have no problem with men in this male-female strength dynamic. Men are also not inferior to women because they're stronger than them. Men are not victimizing women just because they tend to have a stronger grip strength than women. This is all normal and fine, and not something that needs to be fixed. But as I said, comparing women to men does a disservice to both parties. Only allowing a woman's prestige and strength and greatness to be measured against a man's is wrong, just as it would be wrong to measure a man against a woman. In certain areas, men and women can be considered equal, or at least as equal as any two human beings can be. But in many areas, particularly physical areas, they generally are not. This doesn't make one better and one worse, it just means they're different. But apply the idea that a woman character being strong makes her as good as a man. That means for all the women out there who can swing a broadsword around, lift a zillion pounds, fix your own helicopters or whatever, you women, according to these publishers and producers and storytellers, are only considered strong because you can compare to men. You are not permitted to think of yourself as strong in your own right. Many out there writing on this topic have, to their credit, pointed out that limiting the definition of strength to physical strength is both reductive and potentially very boring. Nevertheless, even in these cases, a female character who is defined as strong must still meet this one and only requirement. She must have no significant need for a man. You see this all the time. The man and woman are sneaking through the monster's lair or whatever, and the man says, "Here, get behind me," and the woman gets offended and says, "I can take care of myself." Or you see a man try to help a woman change her car tire, and the woman gets upset because it's apparently misogynistic for a man to assume that she or any person might need or want help. Or you see the woman get rescued by the man, and he has to have that line of dialogue, "Oh, I know you could probably have handled that." Or you see the woman fix her own kitchen sink, and she makes some quip about who needs men, or whatever. This is apparently mandatory in all modern depictions of women. Women cannot even need a man to get something off the top shelf anymore without it being inherently misogynistic. It's completely out of control.
It is. And I'm pretty sure it got started maybe around 2018, maybe sooner than that. It was like a whole rampant thing after the whole Me Too. Like I said, it's been many times. It's been like overreaction to one extreme of one particular like evil situation. It's like a complete overreaction to try to win the respect of women and stuff like that. But it's just like you hear like so many women who doesn't take a beat, think for a moment before they post these things like, "I don't need a man to lift my luggage for me." Fast forward 5 or 6 years later, now they make a TikTok versions like, "Where all the good men at? Don't you see me? I'm struggling at the gym lifting these heavy weights, or I'm struggling to lift this luggage up the flight of stairs." Well, maybe you should take a beat before you got in your emotions and live with that and start making videos talking about, "I don't need a man for X, Y, or Z," because guys are eventually going to take that to heart. Because if they try to be stern or put their foot down, like, "No, I will put this up luggage up for you," but then at that time you would have chastised them, you would have put them on blast on social media, there have been cancellations out the yin yang, he probably would have got fired from his job, or he'd been ostracized, because he dared stand on his principles as a man to help you out, given a particular circumstance that you was probably struggling with. And because of that, now it's like guys just in general learn. You've seen this plenty of times on those videos at the gym where we eventually kind of learn not to mess with you, period. And now you're paying the price from your own making. At least some of the women, not all the women, but it was so rampant that guys just decided to, for the most part, back off. Now you're crying because you can't be satisfied with one aspect or another. You could not just live with the social contract. You broke the social contract by allowing guys to do what we naturally was growing up to learn to do for the fairer sex, like help them get stuff off the higher shelf, help them with something heavy, open up the doors for them, Just natural stuff that we just tell you guys right now. Still do this stuff. Help them out if they're struggling with something. Help them out. That's just a courteous thing to do as a man. Don't listen to the few women out there who like man. Like, I don't need a man. Just ignore that. Do what you're raised to do. That was proper. Ignore all that stuff, because in the long run, that is best. But it takes some of the other women to tell those other girls, shut up, lady. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't care if, Chad didn't call you back and now you're in your little fifis and you're on TikTok. So I'm like, I don't need a man. Shut up. You don't speak for all of us, and let that be the majority of her comments. So that, in her little TikTok sessions. So that way, that can spread and like recalibrate certain things with the vast majority of the women, so that way they can get what they want in the long run, which is like men to be chivalrous, men to help them out if they're struggling, because inherently that is what you like, and that needs to be portrayed in literature and media, so that way young girls can receive that. So as they grow up in their 20s, when they're out in the world, they will have a healthy view of men. So if they're struggling with their luggage, a guy helps them out, she's not going to raise a big stink about it. She'll be pleasant and appreciative, and therefore the guy will feel good about himself, because we like respect and appreciation of the efforts that we put in for the opposite sex, because we don't just do this for the hell of it. We just we're doing it because it's the nice thing and the right thing. But it's not necessarily respect things, but the acknowledgement is a good thing too, ladies. Okay, do not let the small minority of girls ruin everything for the bunch. That's what's happening right now.
The issue of popular culture pushing this idea that women don't need men is a much, much, much larger topic, and not one this video has the space for. The point is that the entire thesis is faulty. All humans need other humans at some point in their lives. Whether a woman needs a man or a woman in the specific situation in which she finds herself isn't really relevant. The point is that even if you put aside gender politics, at some point a woman is going to need a man, even if just practically. Like, if a woman needs an electrician to do some work at her house, there's a chance that electrician will be a man. Does that mean that all women, in the interest of being strong and self-sufficient and, free of the patriarchy, should slam the door in his face and scour the yellow pages for a female electrician? That's approaching clinical insanity. It also represents a nearly clinical level of insecurity. Is it going to make a woman feel less strong to have a trained professional man repair her wiring for her? If so, she has very big problems and probably needs therapy or something. A woman relying upon the physical strength of a man to save her from a dangerous situation is no more problematic than a village or town relying upon the armed strength of the local military force to save it from invaders or marauders. It is possible that the woman in need of saving could learn the necessary skills to save herself in that situation, but the reality is that such a specialized set of skills must be cultivated at the expense of almost everything else. Which is not to say that a woman is always and forever completely incapable of realistically achieving such a level of skill. Certainly many women are, but among other issues, she shouldn't feel like she is obligated to do so in order to be an exemplary or even a satisfactory woman. And writers shouldn't feel like they have to make their female characters into the epitome of physical strength in order for her to be good enough. If a male character is depicted as unable to fend...
doesn't make a good story. Because if your female character is just perfect and don't need any help whatsoever, especially not from a man, doesn't make it an interesting character. Doesn't make an interesting material. It just doesn't. And it's kind of crazy that these so-called writers, who got in this job and just can't even write their way out of a paper bag. Let's be real. But it's just fascinating. They got these kind of jobs and writing characters like this, females like this, and getting away with it, where they should have been fired or not even brought on in the first place. Because, not saying women can't write good characters, but they actually understand the material, understand the assignment, understand about well-rounded characters, layered characters, arcs that they have to go on. Competent writers, men and women, understood this, but they also don't have agendas behind it all. Or even if there's some kind of message in the material, it is secondary to everything else. That is a proper way of crafting a tale. In my opinion, I think most people would agree.
off a skilled attacker, if he is written as needing the aid of another stronger man, he is not condemned in reviews for failing to meet the standards of a strong male character. Even the most traditional understanding of masculinity would not hold this to be true. Men are depicted needing other men all the time, yet women can't ever need men. It's a terrible, glaring double standard that lacks all logic. If a woman must have no need for a man to be considered strong, then she must necessarily be physically stronger than the average man, an expert across multiple academic and professional fields, independently wealthy, or employed in a company that is owned and operated by women and which has a clientele composed almost entirely and exclusively of women who are similarly situated socially and financially. How far out must the network of social and financial connections go in which a man cannot be found for this woman to be considered free from her need of a man? Perhaps the issue here is that the errant woman, errant because she is not strong, has need of a man as a man. That is to say, she needs his manness, his masculinity, whatever that might mean. Perhaps she needs his physical strength, or his higher career status, or his height, or his romantic love, or his ability to father a child. Whatever it is, to depict a woman as being in need of such a thing is apparently deeply insulting to womankind.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that Kim Kardashian lawyer show that got raked through the coals by a lot of people. Both probably, from like the, conservative and non-conservative, or conservative and liberal views alike. See that show, it's like, what the hell is this? Is, like all female lawyer agency that's all about just looking good and just trashing all these guys. And like I say in clips, the whole cases are just nonsense. Doesn't make any sense. I even saw Legal Eagle, who's very liberal, really roast the heck out of that doggone show, because it's not how law works at all. Even to the base level, doesn't work at all. But it has to portray females in this don't need. First of all, like all female lawyer agency won't work at all, because that's discriminatory, because you won't hire men at all at this stage, because it has to be strictly females to try to not have men involved or help in any capacity, because women can do it all kind of attitude, which is nonsensical, because we all need each other. Men definitely need other men, obviously. Like, it's like, it doesn't make us less than a man because I hired a plumber to come fix my toilet. It's weird. It's a weird way of living. It's a weird way of thinking. And then the show had like, two characters. One of them, like, Niecy Nash, I think it was her name, sitting there having, in vitro or something like that, to have her 3 sons. So no man at all to involve again. So she got herself pregnant because she didn't trust the guy or any guy, to be like a healthy dynamic in a relationship to raise her children. So she raised, like, realistically, a single woman raising 3 boys by herself, like, I doubt in realistic terms those 3 boys will survive in like in a real world dynamic, because men need to be raised by other, well, these boys have to be raised by men. We need like healthy masculinity to help raise young boys in order to face the world, because a woman can't do that, because men will have different trials and tribulations that women will never understand. So that's like, and then Kim Kardashian, her character ended up getting like taken, like the semen stored in like those facilities the guy donates to, and behind his back takes it, injects herself so she can have a child, without any kind of say-so of the men's part. So pretty much committing a crime in and of itself. But of course, they excuse a lot of crimes done by women a lot in that show. It's completely nonsensical. It's completely stupid. But they, people behind, and the show was created by a gay man, mind you. But they pushing this weird narrative out in these zeitgeists, and some women are eating it up like candy, even though You're treating it like it's supposed to be like the bad girl club, or one of those like, Desperate Housewife kind of shtick, which is not in any facet, because it's female pandering. And I'm shocked there's not more women out there who look at something like that, not even just for that particular show, but shows or movies like it, and feel insulted that you think this is what women crave or what women look for. It's like how is not more women feeling insulted by that?
Really not calm down. But Hillary, I can hear some of you saying, what's really most important is that the female character has agency. Seriously, if there was one word I could delete from the storyteller's lexicon, I think it would be agency. But fine, let's talk about agency. What even is agency? I'm convinced that half the people I see online whining about agency don't know what it means. If we consult one of my favorite sources for the meanings of words, the dictionary. The faculty of an agent or of acting. Active working or operation. Action, activity.
Yeah, we need to bring back physical, dictionary books is not online, so that way we can actually get words and meanings change over time or even added to the dictionary lexicon. But I don't know, it's like, I just feel that the physical dictionaries that actually has the word, and the definition that existed for probably bare minimum 100 years, if not longer, so that way it's not infiltrated or manipulated by certain industries that to fit their current modern view, where we actually hey, agency, this was actually mean not what it just meant for the past several years when it really permeated the zeitgeist. It's no, this is the definition as it is probably meant for hundreds if not thousands of years, and without it being manipulated by certain folk from one side of the political aisle or the other. This is the unbiased definition that we should go by, and let it be that. This is how I view it, because that's what people ask. What do you think femininity mean to you? No, this is what it means. This is what it's always been meant, and that's what we should go by, not how it makes you feel.
However, the way the modern internet lexicon defines agency is actually a sociology term. So sociological concepts are being applied to the art of storytelling because of course they are. But according to sociologists, agency refers to the thoughts and actions taken by people that express their individual power. This is similar, but nevertheless unhelpful. The most important question I would ask regarding our topic today is, what does that mean for a woman? Apparently, female agency, according to modern ideals, is defined thus. Female agency is the ability of the female characters to take action and make their own decisions that affect their lives and the outcomes in the text. It is the condition of being active and exerting power or influence for oneself. Okay, but hang on. What if a female character is the sidekick to the male main character and he's making most of the choices and she's going along as backup? Does that mean she has no agency? Or does she have to argue with everything he says and make him do it her way in order for her to have agency? Because that would be really annoying. What if a female character is the male character's wife and he occasionally makes choices for both of them and she goes along with those choices? Does she not have agency then? Is she then not a strong female character? Or rather, does she have to make the choices for both of them in order for her to have agency? Wouldn't that then, according to this logic, take away his agency? What if the female character is a powerful warrior and her general and immediate superior is a man? He then gives her an order and doesn't explain. The order from a man has to be followed blindly. And she does so automatically even though she's confused and disagrees because that's her training. Does she not have enough agency then? Is she, not a very good female? Is this okay if the female warrior's superior is a woman? Can a woman take away another woman's agency? Is that allowed? Or will she have to disobey all of his or her orders and do everything she wants to do and then in the end get heaped with praise for being so amazing, and only then can she be said to have agency? According to the previous source, when female characters are able to take action, make their own decisions, and influence those around them, they are understood to have agency. So, a female character who has to take orders, who can't really directly change the outcome of a situation, or isn't strong enough physically to take action herself, or for whatever reason chooses not to, is then not a strong female character. Something a lot of people totally fail to understand is that the women in all these examples are making choices, which is to say they are exercising agency or whatever. A woman who is helping a male main character achieve his goal has made the choice to be his backup and support. She chooses to follow him and to go with his plans. You see this in the Chinese drama Nirvana Fire with Ni Huang. She wouldn't make a move without consulting Mei Chang-su because she was choosing to support his plans and to help him as much as she possibly could. She didn't fight him for control because she had chosen to follow his lead, and then she committed to that decision. The wife character is choosing to let her husband take charge in a given situation. More than that, and this is a wonderful portrayal of marriage marital romance, she is choosing to trust him. You see this a lot in the beautiful Korean drama Flower of Evil, in which the entire story is built around a strong, intelligent woman choosing to trust her husband, who has been accused of being a serial killer. The female soldier character on the battlefield is choosing to obey her superiors, even if she doesn't understand their orders. You see this a lot in The Daughters in 12 Monkeys, a nomadic tribe of women who sometimes found themselves receiving orders from various men in the cast, or even the villainess, Olivia, taking orders from her male superior, or deferring to the leadership of a male expert. To say that none of these women had agency is incredibly insulting and just hilariously false. To take this all the way through, more agency, according to the absurd false sociology definition, must mean better woman. So for a woman to be the best woman she can possibly be, she must have maximum agency. In order to have maximum agency, she must never take orders from anyone, but especially not any men. She must always be the one doing the action instead of letting others, and she must be in some kind of high leadership and ruling position that allows her to influence everyone else in the cast. So the strongest person in the cast, the most powerful person in the cast, and the most important person in the cast. That sounds an awful lot like a Mary Sue to me. First of all, I want to say that the main character of any story is pretty much always going to be the most important person in the cast. So if your female character isn't the main character, then you're a failure, because now she's not going to be the most important person in the cast. If she is the most important person despite not being the main character, then congratulations. You've written a terribly off-balance story fueled solely by identity politics, which has absolutely no cultural or creative value. Second, you're more than welcome to make her the most powerful person in the cast. But if she's the main character and she starts that way, she's going to have no growth and no arc, and so she's going to be annoying, one-dimensional, and poorly written. You can offset this.
Yeah, so Ray Palpatine, or pick a Disney remake lady, the live action versions,
by giving her significant weaknesses that she has to overcome. But as I'm sure you've guessed by now, doing so will certainly undermine her agency. Third, if your female character, for whatever reason, isn't the one calling all the shots in her life, then I guess you're screwed. But the reality is that unless there's only one protagonist, chances are your character will occasionally have to rely on others. She'll occasionally have to do things she doesn't want to do. And guess what? Sometimes those things will be good, or they'll work out in her favor, or at least in the story's favor. Not making her own choices isn't inherently oppressive or stifling. Failing to allow for this is ludicrous and tremendously self-indulgent. Some writers know this. They know that their female character will need to realistically rely upon other characters at some point, but they can't undermine female agency or her strong female status, so they make all their other characters women too. This way, if she has to rely on someone, at least it's a woman. This is why we keep getting all these all-female stories. The writers are trying to have their cake and eat it too. Write a logical story, but not violate the strong female precepts. This is
and God help you if your female main lead actually has a male mentor, because God help you if a competent, wise male sage figure teaches the woman the ropes, because that is somehow inherently misogynistic, or not giving her any kind of agency or whatever. It's just like, it's like, you sucked away any type of male role models. That's what I have an issue with, something like Ironheart, Riri Williams, whereas it would have been a greater story, at least within the terms of the comics, where she would have been introduced and become Tony Stark's sidekick, teaching her the ropes, earning her spot, eventually going solo, so that way she would have been a long-lasting character and earned her spot by the masses, rather than being another girl boss or a person who has her own agency, because I don't need no man attitude, because that would make her seem weak or not very feminist or whatever, because a white male mentor, that's ludicrous. It's like making somehow it's inherently weak. A woman has something like that she has to listen to a man in some capacity, no matter how right the guy is. It's because it'll be oh, she's smart too, so him talking to her make it seem like oh, she's not smart anymore. Oh, she has to be on equal footing. In my personal opinion, Riri Williams is not equal to Tony Stark at all, because Tony, not saying she's not smart at all, but by comparison to Tony, who's been around the block a lot longer, who's been at this hero stuff a lot longer, who ran his own company, various forms of it, a lot longer than her. So yeah, he will be, in a sense, her wise mentor. It's akin to something like Deku and All Might. Ironheart is essentially Deku. She has to learn from her superiors, which in this case will be Tony Stark, a white male lead that's been in around a very long time. So learning from his tutelage will inherently make her a better hero, a better scientist. So when she's out doing her own thing, she takes what he's taught her and doesn't really try to, like you learn from Miles Morales and Peter Parker, don't try to be like Peter Parker. Do your, take what you learn from him and form it to make it work for you and your style. That's why this whole, mentor-mentee, hero-sidekick dynamic was functioning so well, because when Nightwing went out to do his own thing, he took what he learned from Batman when he was Robin and utilized it for his own purposes that worked for him. It doesn't make Nightwing any less of a hero or any less of a man because he was learning from somebody who was better than him, who happened to be a white male character. It is nonsensical, it's weird. You're trying to throw everything off kilter you're trying to fix what wasn't broken, essentially.
Is what happens, by the way, when you let ideology imprison your literary mind and start calling all the shots. If you have a high school girl or an office worker or a low-ranking police officer and she's being forced to do things she doesn't want to do or isn't allowed to do things she does want to do, guess what? That doesn't mean she doesn't have agency as a human being or a character. It also doesn't mean she's poorly written. What you, the writer, do with a character who finds herself in these situations will determine whether or not these kinds of characters are well written. Moreover, if the character arc for such a female means that she only wins when she has total control over every aspect of her life and is relying on no one, not even friends or family by the end of the story, that does not automatically make the story good. In fact, that sounds a lot more like a tragic end to me. Getting down into pricklier specifics, a huge number of female characters these days seem to only be deemed good or even worthy of being written about if they meet certain criteria which are intended to guarantee that they always have maximum agency. These include the fact that she can't pursue romantic relationships with men, sexual relationships, sure, but not romantic ones, and also she can't do other feminine things like having or raising children because that would once again make her no longer the most important person or the person calling all the shots. Writers who adhere to these strict rules are in for a really rude awakening because the women they write will not be women. Let me explain. The idea that women who want these things or do these things, healthy romances or children or something along those lines, even if they're doing them while also being, a soldier, a police officer, a firefighter, a weightlifter, a CEO, an entrepreneur, etc. These particularly feminine characteristics, according to the people yelling about strong female characters, make women weak because ostensibly they remove a woman's agency and independence. Because as we've seen, only 100% independent, infinitely powerful women are good women, I guess. When the reality is, these characteristics have a tendency to be very, very common and natural to women. To some degree, like it or not, these characteristics are deeply feminine. Take, for example, Holga in the recent Dungeons & Dragons movie. There's an unusually physically strong woman, but she is profoundly feminine in her instant, instinctual desire to care for a helpless baby. And that powerful maternal bond became a crucial, essential part of the entire plot. It also, let's go ahead and point it out, did not make her any less strong, physically or otherwise. If anything, it enriched her strength because it added that compelling element of her innate femininity, which audiences are drawn to because it is beautiful. She didn't need to be a girly girl to be profoundly feminine. There are very few traits as deeply or fundamentally feminine as that of a mother protecting her child. As I said before, Sarah Connor, anyone? But another example would be, of course, Ripley in the second Alien movie. How much of her epic, awesome strength came from her desire to protect the little girl with whom she shared an immediate maternal bond. Female characters cannot anymore, apparently, be nurturing, maternal, protective, or any of these other traits which are definedly feminine. We no longer live in an era when Ripley can strap herself into a mech suit to fight a giant alien queen in order to save a little girl who had become like her daughter. And also, by the way, deliver one of the most iconic lines in cinematic history. We no longer live in an era where Sarah Connor can go from naive party girl to world-shattering badass solely to protect and train her son. Modern writing and modern philosophy holds that for a woman to put someone else's needs before her own would in some major way compromise her agency. For Sarah Connor to have even carried her son to term and then taken it upon herself to raise him and protect him, she would need to place herself second and place him first in every single aspect of her life until she died. This makes her no longer the most important person in the cast, so she fails as a strong female character. For Ripley to put the life of a little girl before her own would mean that to Ripley and to audiences invested in her, that little girl's life was more important than hers, which means she fails as a strong female character. Recent film adaptations have shown that a happy romantic ending in which Jo March finds a good husband and settles into a peaceful domestic life of her dreams, the life that she chose, is no longer acceptable. Greta Gerwig's horrifically insulting 2019 adaptation even went as far as to suggest that doing so was prostitute.
Greta Gerwig. Perfect choice to do a Barbie movie. Whew. Wonder what the plot might have been like. What the message would have been like. Someone who directed Little Women. Gee, I wonder how that will shape out.
Shooting Jo's character, as if all marriage to a man is a form of sex slavery, apparently, but it's certainly incompatible with strong female characters. So if you want your female character to be in a monogamous, committed relationship with a man, sorry, but she's not going to be a strong female character. Luckily, you can probably sidestep that one by making her really miserable in her marriage, or by making her sleep around a lot and assert her sexual independence or whatever, if you want to write something that would be about as fun to read as jamming needles up your nose. The idea of female motherhood, or even the simple reality of women tending to be drawn to nurturing or protective roles like Ripley and Newt, is that in current year, depicting a woman wanting to be maternal is no longer permissible. Modern feminism has lied to women for years, telling them that motherhood is an inherently oppressive condition forced upon them by the big bad patriarchy, and that it removes their agency. When the
another good example of like a quote unquote strong female that's like still holds her femininity. The main female lead in the TV show Shogun a couple of years ago. I love that freaking show. Like pretty much like the Japanese version of Game of Thrones, pretty much. And the main female lead, I'm blanking on her doggone name. It's been a minute, but she still held, for the most part of the show, at least the large part of the show, she maintained that feminine features and like the attitude, the traits, but she was also, learning in the ways of the Naginata weapon, and she was badass wielding it. So that is a perfect example of a well-rounded character that did not lose her femininity. That she was caring and sweet and obviously very smart, but she didn't try to establish her own agency or try to dominate all the male figures everywhere. She listened to her shogun, the male character, like people who obviously knew better than her, but she had her roles, like things that made her strong, made her compelling. She was vastly one of my favorite characters. I think a lot of people's favorite character in the entire series. There's a lot of good characters, but she was like probably like the top 3 in a lot of people's list. She was very good, and I mentioned about this when it comes to like video games. A lot of the great video games that we've been getting so far has been made primarily by people from like Eastern countries like Japan or Korea or China, aside from maybe France with like Expedition 33, which is a phenomenal game that came out last year. And it's like certain Western countries have forgotten that because they're leaning so far in this girl boss crap, this like making sure that they don't need no man because we don't want them to look like they're weak in any kind of capacity, because we don't want certain individuals in like the leftist white women to get all up in arms and their Twitter fingers, and it's like, oh my god, like how dare you, this is such a misogynistic, this is why we need to go after the patriarchy because they keep perpetuating this blah blah blah. And it's like, this used to be the norm, now it's a problem because certain women typically that's typically on the left, got a chip on their shoulders, or they got beta bitch males who egging this crap on, that keep perpetuating this narrative that isn't working. That become like a detriment to narrative in all aspects of media and literature. As a problem. And it's actually a kind of a crime that not only infected video games, TVs, and movies, now even commercials, now it's infecting books, and who knows how long that has been going on. Like you can't get certain books published now, all because, like, with movies, it has to have a quota now, because, like, God forbid you have like a woman who is in a healthy relationship with a male, and actually listens to him and following his lead and all that stuff. Can't have that, because you gotta have some kind of issue with a man in order to get it to sell, or get it published or something like that. Or women won't read it, or anybody won't read it because you're portraying most men in a positive light. Or women, who happens to be the lead, but still somehow makes her less than because she's listening to somebody who happens to be a guy, or getting help from a guy in some capacity. It's weird, and that should be a crime in of itself. That is infected. This kind of ideology is infecting everything down to the books.
reality is that for many women, it is a natural fit. And even for those who are not themselves drawn to it, those women still find the maternal instinct and the protective drive present in them. However, as I said, portraying this in a story is not acceptable according to the modern zeitgeist. So these character traits are stripped away from women to a degree that becomes very noticeable, rendering female characters into these smaller men with boobs, basically. Even the strong female character in Mass's A Court of Thorns and Roses series had to have an exchange of dialogue with her male sexual partner in the midst of a 3-day sex marathon about how much she didn't want to get pregnant because after that she'd no longer be living. You see this in a lot of YA novels where the weird social messaging tends to be laid on even thicker than in mainstream fiction, or at least it used to be confined to YA. Most of literature is just repackaged YA these days. This is one of the many reasons Helena Shaw in the most recent Indiana Jones monstrosity was so off-putting. Her relationship with the kid, Teddy, was not a woman's relationship with a child. She would have been more protective of him. She would have been at least a tiny bit warmer with him. She would have, to some degree, been nurturing with him, more like a mother would be. Instead, they modeled Helena Shaw's relationship with Teddy off Indiana Jones's relationship with his own kid sidekicks he'd had over the years. And his relationship with them was much more typically masculine. For him, there was a touch of paternal concern, but mostly it was somewhat aloof fondness, very 1940s fatherly, which was precisely the way in which Helena was shown to treat Teddy. This comes across as inauthentic because the mind perceives that this behavior rings more true for a man than for a woman, so it doesn't seem genuine when you see it in a woman. For a woman to be forced to behave contrary to her femininity in an effort to be more
That's why we didn't want this woman anywhere near Lara Croft TV series with Sophie Turner. I think Sophie Turner isn't like a bad choice for the role, but it's just the person behind all this stuff is giving massive red flags of how this version of Tomb Raider will turn out. And as a person who loves Lara Croft, one of my favorite female characters in pop culture history of all time, in my personal opinion, I love Lara Croft ever since I was a little kid. I always thought she was one of the best badass female characters of all time. Like, I hold Lara Croft in very high regards. So when they are butchering that character or lessening that character in some kind of way to essentially not make her Lara Croft anymore, I have an issue with that. That grinds my gears to no end. And I had hopes with Sophie Turner as Lara Croft. I think she can pull it off, but I feel even better if I'm blanking on the woman's name, just escaped me, but the woman that was in the last Indiana Jones film, I don't have that much confidence the material being anywhere near okay if she's gonna write Lara Croft as some another glorified feminist icon, or some kind of uprooting social gender dynamics, trying to stick it to the patriarchy, or making sure she has her own agency. So God forbid, because with the Angelina Jolie, God forbid she gets helped by a man in any kind of way. But remember the Angelina Jolie version of Lara Croft, where she actually did get help, a couple of times by a guy. It wasn't a big deal. She wasn't less of a hero because of it. Like Batman gets saved by Wonder Woman. We don't think less of him as a man. So why gotta be less of a woman because she gets helped by a man? Or get, assistance or knowledge from a man? How many times Batman gets assistance or knowledge about certain things he does not know, like, let's say, the occult? Of course, he would naturally go to Zatanna, a woman. That doesn't make him less of a man because he got some kind of help or knowledge from a woman who's more of an expert at this kind of stuff than he would be. So by the flip side of that, why would a female in any type of capacity, whether it's books or movies or TV shows, be less of a woman because God forbid she gets assistance in some capacity by a male lead or a co-lead? That's a warped way of thinking, and you should not put that kind of crap in media like that.
Masculine and therefore apparently stronger diminishes the woman because she is forced to strip something that is essential to her femininity. And that's cruel and also very bad writing. The thing is, the more you remove a woman's womanness, the more she begins to resemble a poorly formed man. This is true physically as well. When video game designers tried to reduce the exaggerated planet boobs and other traits like that, they overcorrected so hard that curves of any kind became forbidden, resulting in women who look like boys or young men. Recently, they've begun to take things even further, exaggerating other masculine physical traits like the jaw, as if any hint of femininity will automatically negate the strong part of a strong female character. Frankly, it's insulting. Of course, the flip...
Yeah, and I'm glad she pointed out the video game characters. Didn't know she was going to do that. I didn't know she probably would be that familiar with the video game side of things too. But yeah, And that's a lot of, people who are into video games ire, is the fact that they very masculinize a lot of these female characters. And I think, it was around, Horizon Zero Dawn with Aloy, where things, the gears start turning for a lot of video game fans, where it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why? Because the jaw situation, the shaved head situation, pretty much chopping off any femininity that is standard for a woman completely. And that's why a lot of these like woke leftist people get so irate. People who probably don't even play video games all that much at all anyway, dare to even like got the nerve to raise holy hell about it on Twitter when somebody AI generated a lot of these masculine characters in these video games to look feminine. And notice how a lot of people got more drawn and be like, yeah, if the character with the shaved head in that new video game that's about to come out, I'm blanking on it, if she had like the long flowing hair like a woman, I won't say crazy busty, but actually have like tits to show that, yeah, this is a woman. Women have tits. And like, soft feminine facial features that's typical in a woman. People tend to be a lot drawn to that kind of stuff. That's why Marvel Rivals works so well, because people are drawn to, that kind of stuff. Like beautiful people. It's just natural as breathing. Guys and girls like looking at pretty women that got, voluptuous curves and busty features. Women like to dress and look like that because they're hot women. And by the flip side of that, women like looking at hunky dudes, not these frumpy, Homer Simpson dudes. Of course, there are women out there that like the dad bods, but they're like, there's only a small pool of women like that. It's not necessarily the majority, but they like the square jawed dude, the hunky like Punisher or Captain America dudes. That kind of like thing on the surface is very appealing to women, but it's only they're not shamed for the things that looks good for a woman. It's the guys who get shamed for the male gaze. So what they do about it, they make characters like Aloy, get like square jaw, more attractive to other women. So it kind of negates any aspect psychology for a guy to be anywhere near attracted to her anymore, because they try to cut that off at the seams immediately. Making all these girls queer coded or androgynous or shaped or dressed very masculine, completely ruining any appeal that would be something guys would like. And games like Beasts of Reincarnation or Marvel Rivals, things that are created, or even like the Capcom Resident Evil characters, things that the people from the Eastern Bloc haven't forgotten what markets well to certain dynamics or demographics, I should say. Is the Western Front that seems to having some kind of issue where we can only find certain good stuff created in the Western Bloc, so few and far in between that it's almost like an oasis in a sea of just crap.
Side of that is that these writers will still need to find some way to make these women recognizable as women, and the only thing left to them is sexuality. No longer able to portray a woman's vast array of specifically female characteristics, and now not even physically, the writer is left with only one option: making her a sex object. I read a number of articles and opinion pieces written by women who are upset at the trend of strong female characters because it, in a sense, forces the female character to not be a girl. But how exactly would her femininity be depicted? If she can't in any other way portray her femininity, what's left to her? Many female characters throughout the modern history of storytelling are only really distinguishable as women by virtue of the fact that they are specifically presented as sexually open and man available. When you take away everything else feminine about a female character, the only thing left is her sexual appeal to male and sometimes even female characters. That's it. That's the only way the writers are permitted to distinguish her from men. A great example of this would be the totally random underwear shot in Star Trek Into Darkness when the new girl, Carol, randomly had to put her mostly naked body on display. Like, J.J. Abrams suddenly panics and thought, oh no, how will audiences know she's a woman? Oh right, I can just show them her boobs. The thing is, Carol didn't really need her womanhood to be underlined. This wasn't the kind of story, and she wasn't an important enough character to require an intensive development along the lines of her femininity. Nevertheless, she was still plenty feminine. It was apparent in her feminine demeanor, and most significantly in the father-daughter relationship she had with the Admiral. I don't really expect deep, complex characters from J.J. Abrams, so this was going to have to be good enough, which it was, considering. But Hollywoodland doesn't know what a woman is unless she's naked and ready to go, apparently, so J.J. Abrams had to make sure we all knew she was a woman by showing us how sexually available and ready to go she was. Think about it. In a world where women are no longer allowed to say they want to be mothers, or they like baking bread, or they like being married, and they like having strong husbands, or they're drawn to taking care of people, or they want kids, or they don't necessarily want a fast-paced career. In a world where none of that is permitted, the only female thing a woman is allowed to have is her sexuality. There's a reason so many women these days latch onto those highly sexualized female characters in, like, romantasy books, because that's the only form of womanhood they're allowed to admire. But then there's this other problem. I mean, I don't think I should have to say this, but the current idea that women must...
Yeah, like, feminists will argue, well, we didn't take away their choice. I'm fine if you want to be like a homemaker and stuff. That's your, like, yeah, maybe you is okay with a woman having that choice if they want to be like a stay-at-home mom and all this other stuff and embrace that 1950s mindset and behavior and like the middle ages type of female princess stuff. But a good portion or even larger portion of your little club find it okay to shame and work and take strides into making sure that is pretty much kind of stamped out and limited, minimizing those type of options for the women you say supposedly have this kind of choice. They don't have that much choice. So it's like they're called pick-me's. Your side created that word, the buzzwords, to shame women who want that. Men didn't make that up. Women made that up to shame other women who didn't want to go along to get along with the rest of you, who go against the grain. You don't think that is kind of strange? You think that just was coming out of nowhere? Like it was just there, plop, boom, there it is, like buzzword. It's like, no, your side made that up. Maybe not you specifically, Brenda, but the vast majority of your pink hair, bull nose ring ilk had worked or in these little industries or in these little writers' room, making particular, moving certain pieces and taking certain strides to making sure that is permeating the ecosystem, so that way those girls who supposedly had this choice are now left with their hands are up, well, I guess go with the whole sexual nature thing, because there's the only thing that I can't get called out on. And I encourage girls who feel that limited shouldn't allow themselves to be shamed for wanting to be the stay-at-home mom, wanting to listen to the males in her life, or particularly her boyfriend or husband, who don't want to sit there and go along with the whole feminist movement and all this other stuff that they want to rah-rah about. Okay? It's like, don't feel ashamed if they don't want to put you in their little social club or hand-holding circle. You can feel perfectly fine. You're not the type of person I should be associating with. Anyway, I'm good. I don't care. You call me, pick me all day long. I'm good. In the long run, I'll win in the end. It is what it is. And we should be more women like that in these writers' rooms or in these type of spaces, so they can kick out those bad faith women that ruining for the rest of us and get them kicked out and ostracized. They the ones who should be ostracized more than anybody, because they don't know a damn thing. They're ruining for a lot of us. Those super woke leftists, feminists, the particular types. I ain't talking about Democrats. I'm talking about those super woke liberal white women typically, but super woke white people. There's some beta dudes in that ilk too. that need to be pushed out of certain industries. That's why we need to have gatekeepers. I'm sorry, because you can't just let anybody in, because they tend to try to muck things up that didn't need mucking up. We try to let them in on good faith, hoping they respect what the room they're in. But no, give them an inch, they end up taking a mile. So now there's overcorrectness on the super other way that now has to figure out a way to get back into the middle ground. Because every time something goes in an extreme in one way, somebody gotta overcorrect. It's weird.
Want to sleep with everything that moves is very much a masculine trait. And no, I'm not saying that all men everywhere want to sleep with everything that moves, but between men and women have always been more hesitant and selective with their sexual encounters, given that historically the physical consequences for a woman are greater. Women do not have the genetic drive to spread their seed. Portrayals of women who seem to operate with that drive are fundamentally masculine, like Valkyrie and Thor. There are a few resources linked in the description about this, but the bottom line is that female characters who are portrayed in this way are bizarre because it is a very male characteristic, not a female one. Women absolutely have a sex drive, but it is not identical to a man's. They are very different. Audiences then, who are sensitive to the over-sexualization of female characters, but who still want strong female characters, will react by demanding a rejection of romantic arcs altogether. Because as we've talked about before on this channel, in current Western storytelling, romance and love simply cannot be depicted without gratuitous amounts of explicit sex. So if you want to remove the gratuitous sex, you have to remove the romance altogether. It would seem. Putting aside the fact that romance should not require an NC-17 rating by default, readers who are put off by so-called romantic stories that are little more than delivery methods for high levels of sexualization, these readers will instead look for independent, strong female characters. And so the sexuality is stripped away, but nothing else feminine is put in its place. Because as we've discussed, pursuing marriage is apparently prostituting your female character. So once again, we're back to male characters wearing a very badly written female skin. Most female representations.
That's why the marriage rate is so low right now, because some women don't look at marriage as like an aspirational goal anymore. They, like she mentioned, they keep deeming it like it's supposed to be slavery, when it's not. Like, it's probably only quote unquote slavery if you probably picked a very terrible man, which is why I encourage women to lean on their male figures in their families to use their discernment in order to make sure that the guy they end up with is a male of good character. So in the long run, you're the least likely run into any turmoil that you can fully invest your trust in without a second thought. And marriage wouldn't be such a bad image, quote unquote, which is not a bad image. As long as you make sure you're with a proper person of good moral character. You're not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry.
In media tends to be one or the other of these two extremes, because true womanhood and true femininity is a complete mystery to writers, or it's completely forbidden. So all of this is what happens when writers...
correct something a little bit. It's not slavery at all. Marriage in of itself is a good thing, okay? Because lifelong commitment is a social contract, or a contract in general, let's be real, because you're putting two families together, not just two people. And the guy has his responsibilities for you, and by the flip side, you have responsibilities for him. He has expectations that need to be met, just like you have expectations that need to be met. Guys, by and large, want to meet those expectations. That's why we strive to do what we can to build ourselves up to be competent and financially prepared and all the other stuff. So when we take on a woman, she will have the proper covering, and she can have confidence that things are going to get done, and she can lean on the guy if something goes awry, that he can always fix it. And by in turn, he gets let's be real, steady, consistent sex from a woman that trusts him, trusts his loyal, trusts his leadership, and in turn he has her loyalty. He has her respect. She will take care of the home front that he built, so that way she doesn't. He trusts her not to burn it down when he's out. Raise his children, things that she would naturally like to. It's like, as much as like some feminists like to say, like, oh, you want to be barefoot and pregnant, oh, submission, oh, that sounds like slavery. No, it means that you trust the guy that you're with to not do anything nefarious. if you have like the proper discernment, that guy, if he tells you to do something, it's probably for a good reason, and he's doing it for the best interest of you and the relationship. He's doing it for the best interest of you and the potential children that you might have. So if you picked right, you shouldn't have any second thought that he says left, you're going left without a second thought. You're not going to fight him over the wheel. I was like he might tell you the reason why at a later date, but all in all, you should trust the fact that he's doing it for a very good reason. It's kind of like a general in a war. It's like when bullets are flying, you're not going to sit there and fight the general over why the bullets are flying, why we need to go here. It's like, why can't we just go the other way? It's like, no, just shut up and listen. You don't need to fight over like why. You just trust the fact that this leader has your best interest in heart. And if he is so inclined, he will tell you when and things are settled down, he can tell you why they have to do X, Y, and Z. So that way you can feel like you don't need to feel secure right in that heat of the moment. You can just feel secure later and just trust the fact that he's probably doing it for the best interest. And then when things are settled down, you can ask him later and he can be more inclined to tell you like, okay, reason why we have to move from the out of state to another state because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay, I can see why. I can see why you didn't have to tell me at the time, but it's good to know. It's all about trust. If you were the person who got like good moral character and like he's doing everything right in his life, you shouldn't really need to be questioning every 5 seconds. You should want to submit to that guy. You should want to make him a sound. You should want to raise his kids. You should want to like make sure his the house and kingdom he built is secured and neat and he is stress free. Women naturally want that stuff. Believe it or not, women naturally like that kind of stuff. They want to do that kind of thing for it. It's not a shameful act. As much as certain feminists, not all feminists, or whatever leftists, but it's not a shameful act as they like to depict it. It's a good thing. It's a good thing that you lean into. It's just like you naturally want to take care of your man. It's like a man naturally likes to protect women. It's almost hard to explain. It's just biology. It's just like there's plenty of women that I know, whether they're within my family or not, people that I know that it's just like I just naturally want to protect. It's just like as simple as breathing. It's just I naturally want to do it. I naturally want to make sure they're okay. I naturally want to make sure they're taken care of. I naturally want to do that as a man. It speaks to a lot of men. We naturally want to do that stuff. We don't get shamed for that natural biology. That we want to step in and save the day kind of thing. Make sure you got proper covering. So why is it that you let certain females shame other females for something that is naturally, attuned to all female biology? It's weird. It's a very weird thing that is shamed among women.
Become preoccupied with depicting strong female characters while completely missing the mark with those two key words there, female and strong. What should strong mean? Well written. That's it. I don't care if she's a warrior, a housewife, a high school girl, or an octogenarian. I don't care if she's a good person or a bad person, a weak person or a strong person. I don't care if she makes her own choices or lets other people make choices for her. I don't care if she's a main character or not. I don't care if the other characters care about her or not. It only matters that she's well written. And like it or not, denying a female character's innate femininity means that she's badly written. The end. Is a woman badly written if she lets a man open doors for her? No. Is she badly written if she can't swing a sword as well as a man? Nope. Is she badly written if she doesn't want to have sex with everyone else in the cast? Nope. Is she badly written if she relies on other people, especially men, to help her with important plot points? Nope. But since we're talking here about strong female characters, let's point out that physical strength is not the only nor even the most important or most impressive type of strength. We must be living in clown world if I actually have to say a sentence like that out loud. One more time for the people in the back. Physical strength is not the only type of strength that is available to a person. It goes without saying that for a writer to zero in on this for the build of his or her perfect female character is both lazy and amateurish. Let's put aside for a moment the thrillingly controversial thought that a female character need not be strong in any way whatsoever in order to be a good character, and instead look at other types of strength. Among my favorites is moral strength. We could also call it conviction or integrity. A character who sticks to her principles in the face of incredible resistance or hardship is profoundly strong. Such a woman could be no more literarily thrilling than a housewife or the girl who has the lowest grades in her high school. But if her conviction and her integrity are exceptional, she will come across as not just strong, but deeply admirable and inspiring. If she doesn't start this way, but grows and develops to achieve
animated Mulan. That fits her to a T.
A level of moral strength that will not buckle under any weight, then you've got yourself a potentially extraordinary story. The housewife is unlikely to be heavily trained in specialized fighting techniques. The hopeless high schooler probably can't bench press twice her body weight. Already then, in their initial states, these women are unassuming, physically weak, and certainly not self-sufficient. However, as this moral strength, this integrity begins to develop within these weak women, it is in part their other weaknesses that makes this development so remarkable to behold and such a pleasure to witness. It is inspiring and compelling to other women who have no desire to be weightlifters or elite warriors or Rhodes scholars that exceptional strength is available to them. It is inspiring and compelling to women who are physically strong, because it is a kind of strength that is often neglected and is in itself always impressive and consequential. A female character can be illiterate but still be the kind of person to, despite her lack of physical strength, put her body between her friend and an enemy's weapon. Courage is a beautiful kind of strength. Selflessness and bravery in the face of certain death or humiliation is a type of strength that isn't just rare in fiction these days, but in the world. This selflessness and courage are particularly beautiful in female characters who disregard their own lives to save that of their families, like Eowyn or Ripley or Flower of Evil's Do-Hae-Soo, a timid woman full of self-doubt and self-loathing whose moment of profound courage and transformation came when she needed to protect her helpless niece, for whom she was willing to sacrifice her life if necessary. I once heard someone say that the presence of someone else's strength or achievement does not nullify your own. Comparison, to paraphrase Kierkegaard, is the root of all misery.
And that's another thing that's always a shame, that the motherly, nurturing side is like, I'm not going to get to the smortion topic, but it's kind of weird that, like, because the the birth rate is kind of crazy right now, so low is kind of ridiculous, where it's like, it's like, you're trying to train women to naturally ignore their natural inclination to want to have children, want to baby and mother something. And it's like, I remember watching this whole math video, and he addressed a little bit about that, where it's just like, if a woman doesn't have something to to nurture and raise and mother, that's gonna go out in like gonna erupt in dangerous area, not dangerous areas, but erupt in all various aspects and places that doesn't require it. So, mothering society, that's where you get a lot of these little feminist protests, because they need something to, like, talk down to and mother and all this other stuff. They need that, to channel that into something. Instead of channeling it into a child, it goes everywhere else that doesn't require it. And it's the fault on certain, propagandas, material, is certain leftist material, like, or people that is just like putting that in the minds of impressionable young women, to think that is inherently bad to want to be a mother with a man and have children with that man and raise children with that man, mother the child, raise a child, all that stuff that is, inherently a strong asset that is wielded so well within women. But it seems like it's shamed, and and most women, like to, like, or at least there's a women that I tend to follow, who address the fact that, oh my God, it's like, if it feels like it's always seems like it's like a negative thing, that I want this. It's like they look at you sideways, because, like, oh my God, you don't want to be with us, where we can't just be single and party and climb this career ladder and travel. You want to have a kid that will slow you down, and use all these little shaming tactics, like, like slowing you down. Slowing you down from what? Like, international penis? Slowing you down from what? This career that you get this big stack of money that by the time you're elderly, like, you don't have no family by your bedside? The only thing surrounded by you is your 401k? It's like, the mindset has just been warped to insane degrees.
Female character who is exceptionally smart or skilled in some area does not cease to be smart or skilled if someone else in the cast is a little better than her in some areas, even if that person is a man. Pretending that it does feeds that sense that we can only measure our individual value compared to other people, which is an absolutely terrible way to live. Female characters can be strong without being the strongest person in the cast. They can be heroic without being more heroic than anyone else. Not to speak of the fact that female heroism isn't always necessarily going to be identical to male heroism. A woman like Cha Ji-won in Flower of Evil, who staunchly refused to abandon her husband despite all the widespread hatred being showered on him and despite the fact that he did lie to her, and who in so doing saved his life, stopped a serial killer, and salvaged her marriage, didn't do any of that by being the best fighter in the room or donning the shiniest armor. But her feminine heroism, the heroism of a woman and a wife, was apparent to anyone, and it was admirable and aspirational, and it was depicted as triumphant. But writers these days seem to only be able to understand the idea of heroism in masculine terms. Male heroes can be, and often are, very strong physically and are often martial in some way. It's been this way for centuries. Female characters in our post-modern world, a world in which everyone refuses to acknowledge general fundamental differences between men and women, have to be heroes in the exact same way. But as we've already discussed, it only works well when the physically strong female's femininity is not also neglected. And more to the point, other kinds of heroic females, ones who women are also likely to greatly admire, women like Jo March, Jane Eyre, or even Meg March, are simply never portrayed by modern writers anymore. The only female heroes that women are allowed to admire have to be martial and or sexual. And as I've already said, but at the risk of repeating myself too much, a truly martial female character can absolutely be very feminine. But the strong female character whose strength is less physical and more specifically feminine is glaringly absent in the world of storytelling. Can a woman be strong in a way that is fundamentally feminine? You bet your ass. Take Dr. Jones in the television adaptation of 12 Monkeys, an absolutely brilliant show, by the way. She is occasionally my favorite character in the whole story, and also occasionally my favorite female character, like, ever. Here's a woman who is the smartest in her field, tough as nails, incredibly courageous. She has infinite perseverance, tireless convictions, and the backbone to do sometimes extremely unsavory and morally questionable things to achieve her goals. But all of it is being done because she wants to save her daughter. Every ounce of strength coursing through her veins is maternal and therefore feminine. She is the supreme final form of the mother lifting the car off her child. She will break time itself and bend the universe to her will in order to save her child. And in so doing, she gains another child, the adopted son, James Cole, who reaches out to that maternity, that femininity, in order to save her soul, while she lends him some of her maternal strength in order to complete the impossible mission she has placed upon his shoulders. It's an absolutely extraordinary character, one of the best written women and human beings I have ever seen on the screen. She has flaws, she has weaknesses, she's stronger than tempered iron, but she always gets behind the armed men when she's in physical danger. She's a mother before everything else. In fact, 12 Monkeys is full of exceptionally well-written women, very few of whom are warriors in the strict sense of the term. Besides Dr. Jones, there's also Cassandra Rayleigh, who struggled under the weight of her fate, but ultimately again found strength in her femininity, clarity in her role as a mother, and as a partner to Cole, lending strength to him when he needed it and borrowing strength from him when she needed it. In addition, there was the mad seer Jennifer, who became a mother to her stray daughters, lending them the strength they'd need to survive in a destroyed world, and the outstanding villain Olivia, and later the extraordinary development of the young warrior woman Zeit, who found her strength reach superhuman levels when she experienced the quiet, maturing fulfillment of being a wife and mother. Not only that, but these things, her husband and her child, gave her strength purpose, which was when everything in her life began to make sense to her. They didn't even diminish her physical strength, but intensified and focused it. This is something unique to women that is often neglected in the writing of modern strong female characters. Not only that, but these things are often maligned in modern writing. None of these women were called upon by the narrative to shed their femininity or to compare themselves to men in order to be strong or capable or even well written. They were women first, strong second, which is how it should be. If a strong woman is not written as a woman first and foremost, or if her femininity isn't expressed in some way that goes beyond, oh, look how sexy, then all you'll have is another Stella Gibson or Helena Shaw or Barbie, women who only achieved strength by donning the skin of men, and doing so in the worst ways the writers could think of, as if reclaiming the toxicity of toxic types of bad men would somehow make these women super excellent and not, horribly toxic. We need more Cha Ji-won, whose entire decision-making process was hinged on her bond of trust with her husband and her staunch commitment to her marriage and her family. We need more Dr. Joneses, whose entire flawed and fascinating character was built around a mother's desire to save her daughter. We need more Ni Huang, who was strong, competent, and intelligent, and yet never needed to be the strongest person in the room, never felt inclined to compare herself to the men, never saw herself as one of the boys. Indeed, her strength was made particularly feminine because of her uniquely female compassion and intuition and her protective, nurturing instincts when it came to her younger brother and the man she loved. And when she was threatened in a particularly female way, that is, when she was drugged and nearly assaulted, it did not diminish her strength or dignity in the least for her to be saved from that situation by a man. Or what about Consort Jing, the mother of Prince Jing, who probably couldn't lift her son's sword, yet she might have been the strongest character in the entire cast, living for decades inside the wildly dangerous palace, which only became more dangerous when her son began to make his play for the throne. She could outmaneuver anyone, including the emperor, and maintained her integrity in the face of hardship, mistreatment, and even the possibility of death. Why? To protect her son. Her maternal nature lent her the superhuman strength that intensified her extraordinary character. A good person made almost superhuman by her feminine role of motherhood. It's worth noting that all these women had weaknesses. All of them. All the women in 12 Monkeys had weaknesses. Holga had a weakness in that she wasn't that smart. Both of the main women in Flower of Evil had weaknesses and flaws, and behaved badly from time to time. Ni Huang occasionally made mistakes and was physically incapable of fending off a would-be assailant, and was essentially a damsel in distress for a few minutes. Consort Jing had zero physical strength, no connections, and no power, and occasionally let her emotions get the better of her. Let's say, however, that a hypothetical female character is physically quite strong. A skilled fighter, an unusually mighty weightlifter, a capable and decorated soldier or police officer, for no other reason than variety and realism, all of these are excellent and worthy choices for female characters. But within the cultural landscape of storytelling these days, you have two problems. First, as we've already discussed, more often than not, her physical strength will be portrayed in the same way a man's is. Second, that masculine-leaning strength will then be viewed by audiences and portrayed by writers as synonymous with moral strength. So first of all, a woman who is strong, according to these writers, must be fundamentally non-feminine. And then also, a woman who is strong in non-feminine ways is portrayed as morally superior to other women, which means that these characters are presenting the moral idea that being feminine is morally repugnant. Putting aside the horrendous moral implications, this is also terrible writing. If masculine physical strength is somehow absurdly a female moral virtue, such a character will then also not be allowed any kind of deep construction or development beyond that paltry, ridiculous strength. If there is a development arc, it will be at best a woman character sheds her girly behavior and starts bench pressing paint cans and wearing her ex-husband's coveralls until she can punch through a cinder block or whatever, at which time she is also somehow morally superior to her previous self. Her only weakness was being physically weak, so the development arc will present her as perfect after she has achieved masculine-type physical strength. However, a physically strong woman can be written as enormously weak in other areas. She can be cowardly, impulsive, mercenary, or close-minded. She can lack intelligence or the specific skills she needs to accomplish a task. Within these weaknesses, the writer can create complexity and interest and can plant the seed for true character development. Such development is impossible if the female character may not have any weaknesses. And to portray a strong woman as lacking even moral weakness by virtue of her masculine strength is absurd character development. To refuse to give her any other weaknesses for fear of violating the strong female character directive robs her of a beautiful and compelling character arc, which could have fixed her in the minds of audiences as a truly great character. Moreover, it flattens the resulting story into something terribly dull and inconsequential. If male characters are permitted weaknesses, why aren't women? If male characters are allowed the interest of flaws and development arcs, why aren't female characters? Must women sacrifice even that?
Feminism and the overcorrection of the Me Too movement. That's what it boils down to. That's where the turning point was, where all this media has been corrupted because certain studios and certain industries do not want to look like they're being misogynist or whatever, so they gotta portray or write female characters as darn near perfect, or if they need to be saved or learn some kind of lesson, it has to be from another female in order to make it okay and less problematic. That's why certain, it's like 12 Monkeys, it's like one of those Western projects that's like one of those few and far in between projects that isn't worried about all that mess. Or we got to get certain things from like the Eastern Bloc, that isn't corrupted by this woke nonsense that gives us what we used to have in abundance back in the day. Like, characters like in like the Chinese like show that she was mentioning, or like the show called the show Shogun, or video games like Marvel Rivals, where we get what used to be the standard for both men and women.
At the altar of strength. Weakness is interesting. It's interesting because it has a cause which can be explored. It's interesting because it's a starting point in the character's journey, and the farther she has to go, the more rewarding the accomplishment. Weakness is also interesting because it is a challenge, both to the character and the writer. To rob female characters of their weaknesses robs them of being interesting, of development growth, and the capacity to be admired for something more real than a bolded blurb on the back of the book describing them as a strong female character. Speaking of weaknesses, feminine strengths are very effectively perverted into weaknesses or even into villainous traits in the construction of female villains, as in Olivia in 12 Monkeys, who used her feminine empathy to be tremendously manipulative. She presented herself as a nurturing maternal figure only to pervert that role into one of cruelty and manipulation. She lent support and empathy to Ramsey when he was abandoned and out of his time, only to throw him away after using him. She made herself a mother figure to the vulnerable, traumatized Jennifer, only to use the role to manipulate her and then even try to kill her. How often is it that mothers become villains because their overbearing desire to protect their children perverts into a controlling dominance, as in Carrie's mother? And it doesn't have to be a perfect, clean hero or villain. Feminine traits can be perverted into compelling weaknesses, as in Mariko Ashiya in the psychologically and philosophically ambitious Japanese film The Brain Man. This was a woman whose maternal instinct to nurture and protect was perverted into something unthinkable when her baby brother was attacked and murdered by what's the current code word for these freaks these days? PDF files? Yeah, one of those. And so she responded by making it her life's work to cure the worst possible criminals by being really kind to them, including the one who killed her brother. That was a horrible perversion of a woman's natural inclination to be nurturing. So you see, feminine traits and strengths don't just have to be made into positives. If you let yourself think of women as women, you can find an abundance of female characteristics to pervert into very compelling, frightening villains or just unlikable, flawed characters. So, in conclusion, the big takeaway here is that if you want to write a woman, it might help if she was actually, A woman cutting away female characteristics or leaning on absurdly overblown sexuality will give you terrible girl bosses or another of those faux male toxic characters. This is all very easy to avoid if writers just let women be women. Quick disclaimer, I'm going to say this even though I know people will still ignore it and accuse me of saying that all women are supposed to lock themselves in their bowers churning out babies. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying motherhood is necessary for realistic female characters. Whether or not a woman chooses to become a mother, she will still have that maternal instinct, that impulse to be nurturing and to be kind and to care for others. Even if it's warped into a flaw, it will still be there. I also want to point out that if you write a female character, you don't necessarily have to pack her full of feminine characteristics. The issue arises when the woman is written with explicitly masculine traits. Sure, it helps to make your realistic and strong female character more feminine, if only for the sake of balance, but what you really want to avoid is making her too masculine. And if you want to make her really strong and really exceptional, you'll want to lean on her feminine traits. That will help to make her extremely realistic and compelling, and also, a woman. To be clear, when I say that XYZ terrible strong female character trait is just a bad male trait, I am not saying that the traits possessed by men are bad. I am not saying that. What I am saying is that by and large, what these writers, such as the writer of Stella Gibson in The Fall, what they're doing is looking at terrible men who we can all agree are not good men or good people, and they are applying those traits to female characters and saying, there, now that I flipped the script, I have successfully created a strong female character. At the end of the day, the reality is that the whole concept of a strong female character is absurd and bizarre. A female character need only be written well to be a good character. But if the writer really wants to write a woman who is strong, physically or in any other way, this isn't difficult if the writer doesn't forget that a woman is a woman first and uses that to build her strength, instead of throwing it away to make room for more masculine strength. Women make for extraordinary characters, but only if you don't forget that they're women. More often than not these days, it comes across that the writers who write these strong female characters must actually really hate women. If you've reached the end, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you're...
Yeah, I love her. She's great. I'm curious to know what you guys think of this. She's right. She hit the nail on the head. I'm just shocked to reach into the literary side. This nonsense. Golly, it's like you almost can't escape it. You just want just normal female characters like we used to have, well-rounded. It's just but it's overcompensating for some crap that happened to the past that these industries trying to avoid controversies instead of just understanding okay, we're not going to do that, but we're not going to change how we write our females. It's just being normal women. It's so weird. The Ripleys and the Mulans used to be in the abundance. Or even something like rom-coms like the Katherine Heigls in certain rom-coms back in the day used to be in abundance, where it's not ashamed for their feminine traits and characteristics. It's not shameful for one to be with a man or getting helped by a man or want to raise children with a man. It wasn't shameful. But we getting so, in the Western at least, it's so few and far in between when we get these normal dynamics. Where if we get something internationally, it's, in abundance because they're not infected with the same crap. Anyway, I will see you guys in a little bit for another reaction video. So stay tuned for that. Take care, and I'll see you all later. Peace.